We're live in Batavia, Ohio today as we get set for the second portion of what's been a busy weekend today. It's the Summer Speed'em Fest. It's round number 4 of the Pro-Am Karting Championship from MCC Cincinnati here today on Kart Chaser. I'm Justin Prince alongside me is Taylor Boris. Happy along with you for this action today as we're moments away from the start of qualifying. Taylor, how are you feeling about the action today after we've seen some good racing yesterday? Look to repeat that here today in this June summer day.
Absolutely. Happy Father's Day to all of the dads out there racing or having their kids out there racing here today as we get set for some exciting action to kick off this round of the Summerfest. But one thing we got to keep in mind is also keep an eye on the weather. I know yesterday had to deal with some inclement rain coming through, so they had to do ready racing. But a little bit later on in the day, we could possibly see some afternoon showers. So these drivers here are going to have to be ready to make needed adjustments if need be for today's action.
Yesterday also seen the races reduced by 1 minute per pre-final and final. So we'll see if there's any adjustments on the schedule today or not. Keep in mind, Friday, or rather Sunday finals are usually ready racing, regardless to end the day earlier per the bulletin put up by the schedule. So, the field is now making its way onto the racetrack to start qualifying. It's 206 Master that starts off the schedule once again today. Matthew Lida picked up 240 points yesterday. To be able to score enough points, to be able to lead the way ahead of everyone else so far. 810 points over the 634 of Chris Gorman. Alan Elwood, he had several drives to the field that ended up having to crash in the tire barrier at the end of his day. Went from basically being one of the front runners to being almost 200 points back. Matt Geist and Sean Kennedy round out the top 5 of the point standings coming into today. And it's going to be interesting to see how drivers are able to replicate some of the speed showcased yesterday with some of the battles on track. Today is a different story though, different conditions, a little bit at least, but better yet, more opportunities to be able to prove you can perform here on this racetrack, Taylor.
Absolutely, Justin, as we watch Alan Elwood lead in that number 5 Coyote machine as he tries to make his way through. Then you got the Gillard Kart right behind the 00 of Sean Kennedy. Matt Geis also in the hunt for this as they set up their first attempt of a flying lap around the circuit. Currently, weather conditions right now about 74 degrees and cloudy conditions. So the track's going to be a little bit cooler, a little bit more grip, possibly less greasy as they work their way around the circuit, coming cresting over the hill. Good passing opportunity we saw here yesterday, and we will see again today as they head through the final couple of corners to see who could set fastest lap on this opening run.
Earlier today in warm-ups, it was Evan McCorkindale who put up the top times. He put up a 109 flat on the way to the top of the session in that one yesterday during the final. It just so happened it was him who picked up the victory in that one. Kennedy starts things off so far, top of the board with plenty of better drivers still yet to set times. 108.8. So these drivers have already picked up the pace a little bit from the warm-up session by a couple tenths already. Let's go into full qualifying trip.
Yeah, curious to see how this all works out for him as Alan Elwood is continuing to lead the charge. Seeing if anybody is making improvements in their sector. So far, nobody isn't. As we keep an eye on this front 2 drivers of Kennedy and Elwood. McCorkindale, of course, we see regularly compete here at Batavia at MCC, also at the Whiteland Raceway Park, presented by K1 Circuit. So definitely going to be one to keep an eye on here as they crest over the chicanes, hit the curb a little bit, come out of the final corner. A little check over the shoulder for Alan Elwood as they come down the front straightaway here to set another fast lap here. 108.800 is the fast time across the line. Elwood picks up a 10th to a 108.70 as they work their way through. Michael Wells picks up a couple of spots. Same thing with Joey Newzell. Mike Doty also
Momentum-based carts continuing to build their momentum here with a minute 23 left on the board here. Newsell was amongst the drivers who competed yesterday that also looked very fast in the races. Right now, currently holding on to third in the qualifying session. He's working with McCorkadale. McCorkadale is currently down in the 5th position in the yellow machine.
Looking through the field right now, Matthew Lyda picked up a couple of spots that last time as well. He's now inside the top 10. A good field of karts, of total of 16 drivers out here competing today, as here comes Joey Newsell, Mike Wells and company, as well as McCorkadale out of the final corner. There you see the 19 of McCorkadale getting a nice tow as he comes out of the final corner. There's trouble for one kart. Oh, losing a tire. That's the 16 of Doug Cook.
Just checking on the tire after all that. McCorkadale jumped to the top of the board by 0.3 of a second all of a sudden. 19 quickly leaping leaps and bounds ahead, making up some tow off of Newsell last time through on the course. This should be the final time around for the field, though, coming up here. Wood and Kennedy still the two that are controlling the front of the field on the racetrack, at least. Right now qualified in 3rd and 4th respectively. Elwood looking for a much better day today. Derek Hastings, remember, was the pole sitter to start things off for the final after some intense racing in the pre-final. Right now currently is in the 5th position also. So let's take a look and see where these times now fade out. Morgadale closed up again a little bit on Newsell, this time to the final sector. They come to the checker flag here as Kennedy now tries to get an extra pole alongside. No change on the pylon. Newsell does pick up some tenths, but not enough to be able to slip in front of the 19. So your final winner yesterday at McCorkadale sets the pole time for 2:06 Master. Newsell, Kennedy, along with Elwood, Hastings, Wells, Gorman, Geist, Doty, and Matthew Lyda. He was amongst the front runners yesterday. 10th starting spot. How much a day can make a difference here, Taylor?
Absolutely. And also another thing to keep an eye on as well, your top 7 separated by just about 0.8 of a second. Really close competition is going to be happening here in your 206 Masters. Next up is going to be the 206 Juniors heading out onto the track. A really good race that we saw yesterday amongst them, and keep an eye to see how this all plays out here in your 206 Juniors as they make their way out onto the circuit. Yesterday, we of course saw Tegan Schneider setting up the field here with a win, and it was going to be the driver of Sam Tutwiler who had a good run in the grid for your 206 Juniors.
Tutwiler looked pretty solid in terms of speed, in terms of consistency in the juniors. But the winning differential was 7 1/1000ths in 206 Junior yesterday. That came down to Snyder celebrating over Maxey, as we've seen, and it could have went a whole lot of the other direction when the celebration started just before the start and finish line, while Snyder was still trying to get in front of the 90 at the stripe. How are things looking in their point standings for the juniors coming into today? Honor Klein is currently still the points leader, but only just Taylor. 2 points the separation. Snyder with a max points day has 810. Klein 812 with a 232 points day yesterday. Maxey, he needs another performance like yesterday in terms of speed at least to be able to join in the conversation. We'll have to see what happens, but it's going to be tight throughout these standings. Now, the reason, by the way, too, we have a delay. We're still picking up the carts that lost a wheel here, Taylor.
Yeah, we're still picking up Cook out there on the track here as he is getting ready to be picked up by the safety crews. There he is. There you see the tire gone in there. And they'll get his cart quickly loaded up, and we should be ready to go qualifying for your 206 Juniors in just a few moments.
Should be an interesting field, but your thoughts on the tight championship battle in the series so far this season, because the juniors have had some competitive races. How do you feel about how tight things have now gone with that 2-point separation I was referring to?
I mean, it's going to just continue to get closer and closer. Adler, Klein, Tegan, Schneider are really going to be the two front runners of this championship in the 206 juniors for the most part. Do got to keep an eye on a couple of other drivers because still a lot of things can happen. We still have another... After today, we have hit the halfway point of the season. We'll have 4 more rounds after today, so a lot of drivers still trying to make adjustments if need be. Isaiah Maxey could be one of those drivers who could find his way if the two front runners tangle up a little bit, but we all know that those drivers have been working well together for the majority of the season. So I got to say, keep an eye mostly on those two at the front, but don't count out Maxey or Richards if they can get some good runs here and maybe capitalize on maybe the rivalry we'll see between Klein and Schneider.
We'll see if Klein's able to find a little bit extra here today to be able to score more points after the 290 first and second round scoring totals that he had back about a month or two ago. Finishing the last cleanup as these crew members wait for the word to be able to roll these carts onto the racetrack here. As the drivers now get that command, here we go. Is on and qualifying is underway for 206 Jr. Now, we're talking about this a little bit. It's about being able to time things up momentum-wise and being able to build up runs over the course of a session. And right now, some of the fellow brilliants up front seem to be grouped together to be able to start things off. In fact, the first 6 or 7 cards all on a choo-choo tray.
Well, those front Burrell Arts are all part of the Trinity Karting Group since of their partnership with Burrell Art here to be one of the main top teams in North America. And as they crest over the hill, there you will see the field now work their way through. It's a sea of red for your front 3 drivers as they work their way into the chicanes here. We'll see how it all plays out on this opening lap as you see the Burrell Arts working very well together. That's Cooper, Leighton Mole, as well as a couple of other drivers. The 91 machine of Eli Furnish also leading the charge in this front 3.
Now zipping forward. I believe that's for another class that's popped up for some. No, they are part of the class. It's just taking some time for things to go through on the transponders. Moles and Munsters, who did not take part in yesterday's races, now join in on the conversation on the lineup here. Some of your front runners yesterday way far back in terms of their positioning, though, in the queue, so there is going to be some separation, Taylor, on where these times fall by at least 10-15 seconds compared to the choo-choo train up front.
Yeah, we got 14 carts all around this 0.8 of a mile circuit right now, so we'll see what they can do as they crest up over the hill here and see who can set the fastest lap. You have this group of 3, then you're followed by 2 more drivers. That is Case and Batham and Adler Klein right there behind them in that second group. A little bit of close calls for comfort right there for a couple of drivers in that group of 3. Then you have George Mall, William Richards, Evan Fry, and Lila Beck, and Sam Tutwiler in that backpack as they come down the front straightaway here. Opening time for these drivers as they cross the line. Give it so far to Leighton Mole with a 109.336.
Decent time to start things off, but we're expecting some, of course, to get faster. Right now,
and there we go.
Sam Tutwiler, should say, does indeed go quicker. Dead even with Tegan Snyder. The 108.5s. They are almost a second quicker than everybody else on the racetrack for the time being. So, things looking solid for the 9 and the 90, who are grouped together in their respective pack in sync to a T.
Yeah, the Mole brothers right there, along with the driver of Eli Furnish, need to be a little more organized right now. There's just too much moving around as we see the drivers of Leighton and Cooper Mole switch positions here. and that's just going to cause too much of a stack up and losing all that momentum. In fact, that's going to bring Adler Klein into this little group as well, along with the 812 of George Ma. So maybe they try to get themselves organized here with a minute and a half left to go in this qualifying session. Adler Klein moving up to P3 as they improve upon their lap times here. We'll keep an eye to see how it works out, as here comes Tutwiler and Tegan Schneider across the finish line here, and Tegan Schneider goes to the top, 108.55.4.
Gain a little bit of ground that time by on speed, so they just get a bit more to pick me up, especially for Schneider. It was more of a time loss for Tutwiler with some swapping around. On screen, looking at some of the drivers like Beck, working right now with Klein as they continue to see push, or I should say Evan Frey is the 133 here today. Everyone, and that's the major thing. Coordination is critical if you want to be able to get a good qualifying run out here.
Absolutely. You got to have good coordination. You got to work with the driver around you to have that good run, that good toe. As we go back up at the front, there you see the two Barellards going back at it once again. Adler Klein still holds on. He makes a little bit of improvement. He's only about a 10th behind your pole sitter of Tegan Schneider for the moment, as here they come across the front straightaway, across the line. Tegan Schneider improves to a 108.44.2. No improvement for Sam Tutwiler that time.
Yeah, I think Tutwiler a couple times now not showing improvement. He's fallen off a 10th of a second throughout this session now. See those two working together right now. It's Tutwiler, that's the pusher. Snyder is the lead car in terms of those lined up. I know Snyder as a driver is very good and very strong here at this facility. The reason able to pick himself up max points now for this weekend with the raw pace. He'll have to check a flag to lean against now for the session. Might anyone find enough time to be able to jump in front of the 90 and the 9? Let's find out as they start to spread around the front straightaway. One car backs down. No other changes in that pack for now. The rest of the field come across the stripe to close out qualifying. Looks like as they come across the stripe, Snyder and Tutwiler stay where they were. Line Maxey does jump up to 4. Then it's Layden Mole with Cooper Mole in 6. George Ma, Frey, Furnish, Beck, Richard, Zuski, and then followed by Bethune and Dixon. And under investigation warning, Adler Klein, avoidable contact, interestingly, Taylor.
Absolutely. So now we get set for the 206 seniors that are about to head out onto the track. Of course, after yesterday's race for the 206 senior category, it is going to be Braden Heber at the front of the leaderboard with Ben Lida. Currently, it's about a 30-point gap difference between your top two in your 206 senior category. So a lot of points up for grabs here as we keep an eye on seeing who can have what it takes to take home the championship lead at the halfway point of today's race. But a really good racing we saw yesterday in the 206 seniors as well. We'll keep an eye and see how this plays out in qualifying for your drivers. Of course, Braden Heber won the pre-final event yesterday, and then for the finals in 206 senior, it was Ben Lida. So pretty much just them swapping back and forth throughout the entire day.
Interesting here what happens in this grouping, absolutely, as we get ready for the seniors. Point standing so far for 206 senior has seen Braden Heber outright dominant on raw pace, 270 in terms of the point tally for Heber. He was seen as the potential dominant favorite coming into the final, and then he had a poor start, and then he got caught up at squabbling and equalized out on the way to matching on points instead with Gavin Isaacs. Ben Lida picked up the most points on the day with 280 to close the points gap to 30 between the 8 and the 991 machines. Wyatt Deegan should say, came into today third. then Hagerman. Roderick did not take part to round out the top 5 in terms of the running orders.
There is a little bit of investigation going on right now after your 206 Jr for the number 33 of Adler Klein for avoidable contact. So we'll see if that changes anything in the running order. He's currently P3, so that could possibly change some of the lineup here after this if a penalty is applied.
We'll have to let you know how that's going to affect the starting once we get to that point of the sessions, Taylor. But for now, I was about to say, in the 206 seniors so far, it's been great pace from the 8, but we've seen him be beatable at times this now season, where he hasn't scored a max points round yet. In the 8 kart, he leads the field out for qualifying.
Braden Heber leading the charge. He's all by his lonesome. Addison Ianello right there behind in the 46. And then here comes the rest of the competition. Addison Ianello actually leads a great group of karts behind there. So that could change some situations for Braden Heber. If he has no toe from help, unless he feels like comfortable enough to pull away and get a good enough lead where he can set some quick lap times, that could help him. But right now, Ianello and company right there behind that second group, a group of 4, could possibly change the outcome of who gets pole position here today.
People remember in qualifying ran away from people yesterday on raw speed. Now they come across the time beacon. Already some squabbling for who's going to lead that main pack. And Deegan already shuffling a little bit in terms of how they want to line up there. Seen some of the others starting to get a sense of urgency. In fact, the urgency already seen some passes. A lot of these drivers not wanting to just stay stable here to start this qualifying.
Nope, everyone's just wanting to focus on their own line here, and that will change possibly how this all plays out amongst these competitors in qualifying here. And meanwhile, for Braden Heber, he just need to hit his marks and put up a good lap time while everyone else is squabbling further back as they crest over the hill. A little bit of point of fingers here, as it looks like one of the drivers is going to fall in line right here. Basically, that's the 95 machine of Wyatt Deegan, realizing the situation. Going to let Gavin Degenhart around, as well as also the 91 of Garrett Hagerman as they come out of the final corner. Hagerman also going to let these 2 by as they come across the start-finish line here. Let's see what the times are amongst them. It's Braden Heber at the top with a 108.09. And look at that, 0.8 of a second difference between him and Gavin Degenhart because of the drivers right here jockeying around trying to find out who wants to lead this draft.
Do you want to lead? No. Do you want to lead? How about me? No, I don't feel like it. How about you lead? That seems to be almost the method right now that we're seeing from this pack that's now impacted things. But should be able to see things bump up quicker now with Degenhart leading this pack. Let's see if they're able to work together very well here after not liking how they were initially lined up at all on the racetrack. Seen already the 3 building a buffer, 2 to 3 kart lanes. Usually spells for a solid lap most times. Will that be indeed the case? All that's while Heber has ran away even more so in this session. Time to beat 107.862. Degenhart 108.2. Ianello jumps to second though.
Great drive right there by Addison, picking up 10 spots after all of that. Braden Heber though, just doing what he needs to do, staying out front and pulling away, has a 0.3 of a second advantage over pretty much everyone inside the top 5 at the moment, as we watch and keep an eye on this group of 3 with Degenhart, Owen Mull, and company as they work their way around the circuit, heading over to the chicane here. And so far, Degenhardt is trying to do everything he can to lead this group, but it might not work in his favor. It seems like with them playing around a little bit too much in that opening laps, it could cost them the shot at pole position here for the pre-final.
Right now, the 8 might get back-to-back pole positions here on the weekend. One more time around after this in the session. We're pushing to go even quicker. He does by a couple 1,000ths of a second, believe. Hagerman jumps up within a 10th of his pole. Ainello also got within about a 10th. So the pressure is coming, but the problem's going to be, can they find an extra 10th to 10th and a half to be able to take the top spot from the blue and neon yellow of the 8?
Seem to be a little bit more organized right now in that second group, so if they can just keep it clean through here, they may have that shot to take the pole position away from Braden Heber as he comes cresting over the hill for the final time in qualifying. Ducks his head down, tries to get out of the air as much as possible as he sends it into this corner here, into the boot. And as he works his way through, he'll snake out of the final corners here. He's got a good kart. He can maybe put on a good show for us here today in the pre-finals and finals later on today. But he's got to hold on for the final time in qualifying this weekend. Across the line, Braden Heber. Does he improve? A 761. Let's see what the rest of the field does as they come across the line. No improvement for anyone inside that group.
No changes. Hagerman actually lost a second on the final time around. So it's Heber over Hagerman. Ainello, then it's Deegan and Degenhardt. Owen Maui quiet in the session in 6th. Tanner Gorman, Caleb Lenter, better runs than yesterday's qualifying. Then it's Bean Smith, followed by Zach Smith, rounding out the top 10. Also in the field was William Specht and Larry Pike. So Braden Heber back-to-back poles on the weekend, Taylor.
Good points for him there for pole position and a good opportunity for him to lead the charge in the pre-finals, as we'll keep an eye and see what he can do. But now it's time for your 206 Cadet category, about to head out onto the circuit. Of course, yesterday in the 206 Cadets, we saw Hayden Lawson taking home the checkered flag in a dominating fashion over Drew Schneider by over 16 seconds between himself and Schneider. Eli Alexander wrapping up your podium finishers in the 206 Cadet category.
As they get ready, we'll take a quick step aside. You're watching Kart Chaser coverage. Pro Karting Championship Pro-Am action continues from MCC Cincinnati after this.
All the way up to the finish line. Who is it going to be? And it's Sean Perez who wins in Crescent.
Ty Fisher wins $1,000 in KA100 Jr.
Hi, Bob John Bird for TV Kart USA on home soil. They take the win in Amarillo.
Amarillo Kart Complex is now the official distributor for TV Kart in the continental U.S. Become a dealer today.
Champions aren't just born on the kart track. At SimShop, we deliver professional-grade simulators with the best performance-to-price ratio in the industry. Founded by racers who understand what you need, our SimMagic and Moza equipment is powerful enough for the pros, yet affordable for everyone. With unmatched customer support and a thriving community, we're your racing partner. Visit simshop.com today.
Florida kart racers, you asked for it and we're going to bring it. Introducing Florida Karting Championship, FLKC, a brand new racing series coming to Florida in 2026.
Welcome back, everyone, to MCC Cincinnati as we continue on with our coverage of the Pro-Am Karting Championship. The 206 Cadets now hit the racetrack for their qualifying session. And Lawson, so far, leading the way in the point standings by 40 points over Drew Snyder. Looking to grow that gap even more after back-to-back 300-point rounds. Colton Hoops also is in range of the championship. He's got 725 points so far in the season. That keeps him within about 120, or rather 135-ish points, maybe 145. So, qualifying is underway for them. Can anybody stop that 10 card? That's the huge question, I think, in a lot of people's minds today, with how quick Lawson dominated the field yesterday.
Absolutely, Justin, and I gotta say, Hayden Lawson is going to be one to watch all weekend long, and probably for the rest of the championship as well. He's got definitely the speed to be able to hold on and put on another great showing as he leads the charge. We got also Hunter McBride, Colton Hoops, and Wyatt Huntsberger out on the track. A total of 5 206 Cadet drivers heading out on the field for qualifying.
Six different competitors. I believe we have a new one in Hunter McBride, a part of the list here today. But the rest of the field did take part yesterday in some of the festivities to be able to race around this track. We've seen as well how intense things were in terms of some of the battles for the podium, because some of the incidents that built up on the racetrack involving Huntsberger and a couple others, and open up the door for drivers like Coop to sloop onto the podium. See if there's anything like that here today. The first time is coming across the stripe right here. Lawson running away from everybody on track. First time, 108.7. It's a 1 second near advantage, 9/10 in fact, over Drew Snyder to start.
Good run here as he works his way through. I mean, Hayden Lawson is just doing a great drive right now by himself. Really good pace, even ahead of the competition for the drivers who are trying to work together to get a good run. Wyatt Huntsberger up in that P3 right now at the moment as we keep an eye on your current pole sitter of Hayden Lawson. There you see the 11 of Drew Schneider right there, trying to see if he can pick up a little bit time to try and see if he can have a contention for pole position here today.
That's the tough thing, is where can you find that much amount of time with the car in the course of a weekend? When you have somebody that's that strong out of the box, it's so difficult to be able to try and figure out where you're going to find all that speed in the course of a day or so here. It's not just about setup usually at that point.
He picked up a little bit of time right there. Here comes that second group. No pickup of time in that group as well. But Drew Schneider now just 7/10 of a second. So he found about 2/10 as Johan has moved up to P3. Still 2 seconds behind, but still finding pace as these young cadet drivers. That's one of the great things with these youth and cadet classes is there's still a lot of learning for them. Still a lot of interesting things that they can try and pick up from their coaches, from them themselves, learning on what to do, what not to do on the track to find and eke out that extra second, that extra tenth, or even that half a tenth in order to improve upon and be ready for today's action.
All in little bit of a drop tire there. Back straight away. Hoops making the move. That's McBride that had an issue going to the corner. Brian currently at the bottom of the order, and having some troubles trying to make sure he doesn't overdrive these corners. Now remember, these are some of the youngest drivers we have on property in terms of the age diversity too, that we see all grouped together here, about 7 to 12 years old. And for some drivers, it's about learning the track. It's about learning how to get the racecraft together, and that takes time to develop.
It really does, and that's why it's so important for these young cadets drivers to just listen to their coaches, to help them point out certain things that they can do to help out. And also, if you notice, one of the drivers right there had a little camera. I mean, most drivers you see have a small camera attached to their cart, so that way they can go back, look at the data, look at their driving style. They'll be able to point out, okay, this is what you need to work on when you're on this section of the track. That's what you don't need to do when you're over here in this part of the track. So the coaches will sit down with these young cadet drivers, point out small things that they need to work on, so that way when they go back out for their pre-final, hopefully they can improve upon it and maybe have a shot of improving their position for the finals later today.
Check flag out in the session. Hayden Lawson already finishing up with a 108.3. No change for Drew Snyder. Pole separation stays at about 9/10 of a second, but Hunter McBride finds pace to close out and jump to third over Hoops Huntsbarger. Does not put up the run they were expecting in fifth, and Johan Krutkin rounding out the sixth entrance, 2.2 seconds off the pole. That nearly brings us to the halfway point of the qualifying sessions, just like that, Taylor.
Absolutely. We are halfway through, and it's time to have the amazing shifter class head out onto the circuit. One of the great club racing tracks that we have here that utilizes shifter class late racing. We have a couple of regional series that do shifter class, but not a whole lot of club racing you see utilizing the shifter cart. I believe MCC is one of the only few that does that we cover here on Kart Chaser. And I gotta say, yesterday we saw Riley Pegram pull out an amazing victory ahead of Nikolai Dukov to take home the checkered flag in yesterday's event. We had a total of 5 karts. It looks like to be just about the same as well for Riley Pegram, who's also competing in the Michelin Pilot Challenge this season as well in the TCR category.
Yeah, it has looked very good here this weekend as well in the kart. Keep in mind in the point standings, Nikolai Dukov does have the advantage as they have been here each round. Missed the first 2 rounds for points scored. To be able to have a shot, Pegram would need to score max points basically the rest of the way. As the karts get the green light to go, some people ready, some still trying to get fired up. And looks like we're underway for qualifying. Dukov is the first one to hit the racetrack well on the road. No one going to be relying on draft here.
And here they go, heading off. There you see the Kart Republic machine of the 237 of Nikolai Dukov, leading the charge right now as he will try to get those tires up to temperature. Normally we try to see these drivers here run anywhere between 2 to 3 laps before the tires start to fade a little bit here for the most part in these shifter categories. So we'll see if that is going to be the case here. And we know for a fact some drivers will try to just run the entire session as quickly and as long as possible. Don't want to go through and mess up the tires for your finals and pre-final events later today.
So they now set things up for the beginning of the runs. 4 minutes to go on the board still. Dukov with a big amount of separation on the racetrack compared to Riley Pegram. Also in the class today, Doug Duff makes the return back to the facility. Layden Bull is a new addition. Eli Furnish did not take part into the finals yesterday. And Jeff Carroll rounds up the 6th. Ready to do so. Varying levels of experience as expected here again for these shifters here. So 2 on the pro scene and a couple others mixed on in that are looking to show they have a kart that can win.
We're going to do that, and that's one of the things here also when it comes to club racing in these categories as well. It allows drivers who want to test it out, see what it's like to drive these certain cars. Of course, there is some private testing that they can do as well, but also just running these club events help get used, acclimated to running this particular kart that maybe you're not used to driving. Of course, for drivers like Dukov, Pegram, Duff, and Furnish and Carroll, they are used to it. But for someone like Leighton Mole, it's his first time seeing him compete out here this weekend, and he is just learning a little bit of how to get around this track with a shifter kart. But right now, Riley Pegram, 1.78 seconds ahead of Nikolai Dukov as they work their way through with 2.5 minutes left to go.
Now, to keep an eye on Duff as he makes it on the racetrack. The drivers in the under 1 minute club so far. Duff, once one of the drivers that, well, regularly just runs this series that comes to mind here in the Midwest. Comes up a lot when it comes to these types of events. Just looking to have some fun here. 2 minutes to work with. Session. Any more major changes as it looks like they'll come across the stripe. Duff does. 58-second bracket still. He is in his own club. Eli Furnish goes to 1 minute club. Leighton Mole jumps with him to 4th.
Really good run right here as we keep an eye, see what can happen with 1.5 minutes to go. Pegram doing everything she can to hold on as we close in. There you see the number 4 machine of Eli Furnish. Has to pick up a little bit of time. Currently 6.8 seconds back from pole position as they work their way through. And there's the 25 machine of Leighton Mole learning a little bit as well. Currently picked up 2 spots at the moment. Almost 7 seconds behind your pole sitter as Riley Pegram comes across the line. Last time by, improves to a 53.869.
Family members all racing. All the adventures, the 2 of them. Once one of the drivers recently competed in the action Newcastle in terms of being able to perform in the series with CIK Kart USA across the regions. So remember, some of these drivers run local, some of them run regional, many run national. It's about staying tuned and fine-tuned with the go-kart and staying warm and used to running on a racetrack in general, though, if you want to develop as a competitor.
Absolutely, and some of these drivers are doing that. They're going to continue to run the clock down to help develop, learn a little bit more, so that way when they come back into the paddock, they can talk to their coaches a little bit, talk to their mechanics to figure out what they need to do, what adjustments they need to make on their kart, as well as also maybe a little bit of how they're driving the circuit, what adjustments they can make for themselves in order to find that little bit. Because right now, we have 3 drivers who are, as Doug Duff comes across the line, checkered flag for him, same thing with Leighton Mole and Eli Furnish, all of them improving each and every lap that they've done, just not enough really to go and challenge your top 2 as here they come across the start-finish line for Nikolai Dukov. Improves his lap time, but for Riley Pegram, it's safe to say as she pulls into the pits that she will start on pole position for today.
Very comfortable up front for the top 2. Pegram ready to back up the speed from yesterday. Dukov in 2nd, Duff in 3rd. And a whole ballpark back to Mole over Jeff Carroll. Eli Furnish falls to the tail end of the running order at the end of that session. So Pro Shifter comes to a conclusion, and now that brings us over to the KA portion of the calendar. KA100 Master is now the next grouping on the racetrack. The Masters yesterday seen Andy and Chris yet again dictate control. Andy scored the max points day, Chris scored 270 compared to him. Those 2 building up a buffer more than 100 points to the next closest driver from 2nd to 3rd.
And it is only 12 points separating the two of them right now. So this is going to be fun to watch with Andy and Chris Kutchers as they get themselves ready to go. Damian Jennings currently sits P3 in the standings with that 275 machine, and release them out onto the track as they get set for their qualifying here in JA Masters.
Andy Kutcher that came away with the win, by the way. He picked it up by 7/10 over Chris. You know how lockstep the two of them were yesterday, though? They were identical in qualifying and lap times. They're a lot more spread out today, so more individualized for today's qualifying run for the two of them.
Absolutely. So we'll see how this plays out for the competitors as they work their way around the circuit to start off the action here for the Kutcher brothers as they come up to the top of the hill. As Andy and Chris lead the charge, there you see the Red Speeds heading down into this to the boot of the circuit and get off lap number 1.
They'll start things off with a bang to this qualifying session. Amazing separations for each of these karts, about 4 or 5 kart lengths, no one with major draft toe time being. So it's the Kutchers, Joey Newzell amongst this class 2, David Jennings, Greg Leahy, Neil Hamilton. So no surprises, no major additions done in terms of entry-ins today. Just all about getting the drive together for the Kutchers. Try to see if he can catch up with them. Andy seems to be pushing hard and making sure he gains some ground on Chris and builds up the buffer.
Watching on and keeping an eye here as we see them two working together. Joey Newzell also right there in the hunt, a little further back as here you see the Red Speed machine starting to get ready to start their first flying lap here. Let's see what the times are as they come out of the final couple of corners. And out of the final corner they come, Andy and Chris Kutcher. The 296 to 279 Red Speeds across the line with 3 minutes to go. And 1 minute 65 for Andy Kutcher, a 101. So 4/10 of a second difference between your top two on that opening flying lap. So we'll see what Chris can do here in response. No changes for the most part as far as jumping up or down the running order. The gap's currently separated by 1.2 seconds amongst your top 6.
And remember, family means a lot to those front two. They've been the lockstep of the racing adventures here at MCC Cincinnati for a few years now. Andy usually is at the speed to be able to build up the buffer, but Chris has been able to capitalize on mistakes in the past to be able to pick up race wins. Earlier on in the season, during the first weekend, one of the karts broke. Chris got the win from it, and they're like, it's all good. Kart may have broken down, but we had fun along the way. How things gonna happen for the next day? Well, Andy bounced back and got the win the next day. Right now, the separation, yet again, or what we expect within a 1/10 of each other for the top two. Newzell is still in third.
And Newzell was able to pick up about 4/10 that time by, so now he is trying to close the gap a little further. Maybe try to break up the two Kutcher brothers on the front row for pre-final action later today. Greg Leahy moves up a position to 4th spot as they try to work their way through. Currently, Neil Hamilton sitting P6, 1.6 seconds off the pace here in qualifying. So a little bit of work to do there for Neil as a minute 18 left to go on the clock for qualifying in your KA100 Masters category. Out of the final corner here with a minute to go. Let's see how this plays out amongst the Kutcher brothers, who can respond. And as they cross the line, a 1 minute 17 and a 1 minute 26. So it's still a 1/10 of a second difference amongst your top two.
Just staying together in terms of the order. No major separations here amongst those two. Just gaining that 1/10 at a time is all you can really say with the tire pressure buildup here. Remember, when it comes to how the setup is, we touched on this yesterday, Brad Dalton and I, these drivers have to be very careful on how they build this kart. Make sure it's higher up on the right heights with how bumpy the surface is. Very abrasive feeling. Some drivers describe it as similar how you would feel in the UK in terms of the driving style, as we've seen. There's come from the UK exclusive competition a few weeks ago here. And the tire pressures can kick up 4 or 5 degrees, 4 or 5 PSI, compared to what you started out for the course of just 5 minutes or so. Andy Kutcher does break under the 1 minute plateau, though, to be able to set the pole over Chris. Joey Nuzzo comes away in third.
They are still qualifying, I think, because Andy and Chris crossed the line before the checkered flag, so they still got one more lap in them in order to make a round. We'll see if they continue or they pull it into the pits, but those two are still going on. But for Joey, Greg, Damian, and Neil, they are set in their positions here, so keep an eye on this right here. Could Chris find that extra couple of tenths to go and get and break into the under 1 minute mark as they work their way around the circuit here in the final couple of corners? Out of the final corner they go. Here comes the two Kutcher brothers who can improve. Yep, they're going to go and run one more lap. Nope. Chris Kutcher pulls it in. Andy Kutcher does not improve. So, yep, it's going to stay as is.
So no differences there, essentially, amongst them. It does stay Andy and Chris, then Joey Nuzzo, followed by Greg Leahy, Damian Jennings, and Neil Hamilton in terms of that running order. So, already burst our way through what is essentially 6 sessions so far. Next up is going to be the minis and the micros. And that thing is, yesterday, minis and the micros had a very small grid size. We had 3 total karts spread across 2 classes yesterday. And that's seen in the very end for those races. Jack Kotowski picking up the win in the micros. The minis, by default, went to Drew Snyder. It's looking like we may have some of those drivers back here today.
I think we got a little bit more than 3 drivers here in qualifying. We are looking maybe about 6. Nope, I think we might be less. It's still going to be 3 drivers here for your micro mini Swift category.
Yeah, those are other class members that are just getting in position for the next session right behind them. Just 2 drivers have competed for points this season in mini. Drew Snyder and Jackson Franco, there's 2. And right now, Drew Snyder seems to be running away with the championship as Jackson Franco did not take part yesterday. Points the lead, all running near 300. It's on the missed race. Micro, though, is a little bit more intriguing, where it's been 2 max points days for Jack Kotowski. Wyatt Huntsbarger trying to keep up with him in the standings, trailed by almost 100 points. So we are underway for their respective group. As mentioned, Jack Kotowski coming off some strong success at the national scene recently. Newcastle Stars, and ended up being the highest running finishers for TKG, in fact, being able to step on the podium for the organization on the way to a solid weekend.
Yeah, Jack Kotowski is definitely one of those future superstars that we will see working his way through the ranks of competition in the world of karting, and especially with a group like Trinity Karting Group and Burrell Art is going to be an amazing group to watch over the next few years in his transfer up into other categories of karting. As there you see Kotowski leading the charge right there, the 61 of Wyatt Huntsbarger, and then Drew Schneider by his lonesome in the mini category.
Just steadily just running their lines, quite simply. All you can really do in terms of grouping like this. Doing karts, have some fun. Go from there. Wonder what Dinosaur Juice tuning would be able to find in terms of some tuning speed for Huntsbarger. first times. According to the board, it's a second. Huntsparger slower than Snyder, in fact, to start off the session.
Boy, that's not looking good there for Huntsparger, as he has got to find a way to pick up some time here. But for Jack Katowski, a 104.941.
Jack Katowski just backing up the pace yet again. Every time you see him at the regional level here, when it comes to these races, just puts on some strong pace to be able to control the tempo. And remember, these drivers, it's about the future of motorsport, as you were referring to. For a lot of these drivers, in about 10 years, many of these competitors are going to be some of your drivers you see in big-time racing. They have to start somewhere.
Absolutely. These drivers that we see right here in the micro, in the mini, in the 206 cadet category that we saw earlier today, these are the future superstars that we could see competing at the highest levels of motorsports, not just in karting, but even in full body race cars that we will see working their way through. We see it time and time again, and it's pretty amazing. Ever since myself, Justin, coming on board with Kart Chaser as a commentator and working with them, just watching some of these drivers work their way up through the levels of different styles of karting and then progress into full body cars, whether it be the open wheels or sports car or even NASCAR, as we see today with some of the drivers making that step forward. It's incredible to watch these drivers make the way through all forms of motorsports and compete at the highest level.
Less than a minute to go in this qualifying group. Still, 104 is being set by Katowski. Wyatt Huntsparger does now find the speed to jump in front of Drew Snyder overall. Still going to be close amongst those for second overall. Drew Snyder was really good at the straightaways yesterday, especially off-corner exit to the middle of the straightaway. But with Huntsparger, that looked a little bit more smoother in the corners in terms of some of the expected potential battling here as they come up to the checkered should be this time by for this pack. These groupings on average getting about 4 laps based on their average pace around the racetrack. Jack Katowski quickly makes his way through 13 and 14. We'll take the checker flag here. Jack Katowski puts up a dominating qualifying run once again to be able to pick up an interval of more than a second and a half. 104.402 is the time, as Huntsparger does not improve, and neither does Snyder on the last time around. So Jack Katowski over Wyatt Huntsparger and Drew Snyder again is your running order for Mini Swift and Micro Swift. So that's going to bring us into the last two classes of KA competition, Taylor, on the day. Before we take a bit of a break and go behind the paywall, KA100 Jr. They've got a sizable field here today.
Absolutely. And yesterday, of course, with the KA100 Jr category, it was still an exciting battle to watch. Nico Katowski is still your points leader by 32 points over Adler Klein. And after yesterday's results that we did see amongst the KA100 Jr event, I got to say, Nico Katowski and Adler Klein are still going to be some of the favorites to keep an eye on throughout the rest of this championship season. Watch Alex Kutcher as well, Robert Lash, they had some good runs as well, but they got to find a way to improve. They were about 3 seconds behind Klein and about 5 seconds behind Katowski, so hopefully today they went back, looked over everything through the data to be able to make improvements for their race today.
Mind you, with the championship standings, it's another close one, 32 points between Nico Katowski and Adler Klein. So things stay in a razor margin tight. The only reason for the big difference building up there was that max points day. picked up by Gatelski. Remember, 200 points for the final, and you have about 100 available. It comes to the pre-final. Green, green, green. Underway for KA100 Jr. Let's keep an eye and see how they will do. Now, in this pack, earlier today in warm-up, it was Nick Gatelski with a quick time with a 1:02:05 as the benchmark, averaging just under 50 miles per hour. Klein, Kutcher, Lash have been the top four. Those were four names in the conversation for the battles up front all throughout yesterday. Klein already trying to pass by Kart. He wants the lead, not follow.
Absolutely, as we keep an eye on the action here through the field as they start their first warm-up lap here. Klein, Lash, and company across the line to start that first lap. We'll see how it all plays out. Here comes Nico Katowski as well. And we'll see them work their way heading over to turn 2 and 3.
Lockstep amongst the red and white cards as they look to fire off well. Start of this session. 9 total competitors on time and in scoring, by the way. That includes Gatelski, Lash, Klein, Kutcher, Phillips, Gallego, Richard, Beck, and Sircone. All drivers we've seen yesterday take part in this event. Again, this is the second of 4 different round weekends on the season in 2025. The Summer Speed'em Fest. Yesterday, teams taking part in a barbecue. And based on what was seen in terms of the team discussion, apparently there was also a giveaway for a duck. A winning number had mentioned the drawn and was claimed yesterday part of the barbecue, so somebody got some goodies too on top of it.
You can't go wrong.
The driver swap.
Absolutely, but you can't go wrong with a good barbecue as well and getting some free stuff. So watch on as Katowski currently holds on to the pole position for the moment. Robert Lash right there behind, just under half a tenth between your top two. Adler Klein about 3/10 of a second behind with Alex Kutcher in 4th. So a little bit of work needs to be done here for drivers third on back. We'll keep an eye on Katowski and Lash as they come up through the final couple of corners to complete their second lap.
This got corrected because for those curious to the broadcast side of things, we do work remotely on the side of things. There was the rain that hit right after we finished up the race, so people said, you know, we're not going to have that in the middle of the rain. Barbecues are difficult to have when it's pouring rain outside and threatening thunderstorms.
It is very much difficult to have.
Yes. Kind of a peek behind the curtain, so to speak. My apologies there, but they did give away a duck. So there's that.
Do we know who got the duck?
That I don't know, but I know they gave away 1 or 2 of them. And it was a discussion point. Each of these events, they do hold a special event as part of it, like the Fiesta for Batavia Descartes. For this, it was supposed to be a barbecue, but you also have in August, you have the Lua Hawaii 50. That is going to be one of the big, if not the big ones, because there's the Luau, but there's also a 50-lap money race as part of that event next August, this upcoming August.
That's going to be exciting. 50 laps around this circuit. I mean, talk about running an endurance race almost.
I think that's kind of the point. Get all the 206s on the racetrack, battle out for some money, be able to see who's the best of the best in the 206 category. There was some excitement about that last year in terms of seeing who would get the edge there. Alex Kutcher, by the way, is top of the board right now. Albert Klein, Robert Lash, Nico Katowski, Josiah Phillips, the current top 5. Right now, things going a little bit more differently than what you would see based on just the number sheet. In terms of execution here, it's going to be close for some karts. some of these drivers going to get an extra lap, maybe. Close to one. I think one or two got some extra laps there.
I think Kutcher and Klein and Katowski.
Yeah, so they might get another shot to go around the track. Everybody else did not make it to the beacon before Fit went to full checker flag on session. As Sircone will finish 9th, Richard Gallagher, Beck, Phillips, all locked into their spots here.
Resting up over the hill, Kutcher, Klein, Katowski, and Lash. Let's see if any one of these four drivers has what it takes to take the pole position away as they come through. Right now, Katowski had the best lap last time by as he was making some improvements. Let's see, can he respond out of the final corner? And finally, the checkered flag for them falls for them across the start-finish line. Katowski and Adler Klein take the front row with a 59.790. So they were able to sneak on by and get that last lap and change the entire outcome of your KA100 Jr qualifying session.
So it's Klein on the pole. Does so by near 0.2 of a second plus. Times now circulate and change. Hold on. I believe Katowski may have cycled. We'll get the exact order once we get to that class. Quite simply for the pre-final. See where things officially shuffled. But one more class left to go. And yesterday, it was one of the sparklers of the day. A wild race that's seen drivers like Ryan Miller and Jacob Petticord get tangled up while battling for the race lead. Ryan Miller tried to outrun a penalty, couldn't, instead got scored 4th. Isaac Gardner picked up the win in the class. All while drivers like Will Steele ended up gaining ground in the championship over Miller because of Miller's mistake in contact. It was 850 points entering today now for Steele. Miller with 661, Petticord, Lina, and Heber, the rest of the top 5. As the track now hits the carts now hit the track, and we're underway for our final qualifying before we go behind the paywall today. For anyone watching along, you can become a member today if you want to watch all sorts of racing action from across the country and go-karting action from Texas to Florida to California to every state you can think of and every major event in between. Be sure to become a member today if you want to watch this action and more. Or to be able to go split screen if you want to with some action in Wisconsin for Route 66. Become a member today for Kart Chaser. As qualifying is now underway, it's Steele, Carter, Thompson making a start here today to add to the driver lineup. These two staying in sync from the TKG camp.
Watching on here as they set themselves up for this qualifying session. There you see them lockstep here as they try to work their way through the circuit. And these drivers of Steele, Thompson, Miller, and company really trying to put on a good run in this session, wanting to try to make some improvements. But we know for a fact your KA100 Sr category is going to be one to watch and full of excitement as they crest over the hill, heading over towards the boot. And as they do so, a little bit of a slide right there amongst your two competitors we watch on of Steele and Thompson. So far, nice, smooth, and consistent as they come out of the final corner. First lap times up on the board will go as followed across the start-finish line. Will Steele leading the charge. He comes across the line, and he will lead currently with the fast time. And just as I say that, Jacob Petticord will go up to the top with a 1:0.23.
Petticord had that older chassis look when it comes to black and white. That makes a pass, in fact, in this qualifying session. slip on by. The reason I said that older front look is look at some of the front of the carts. It looks a little bit more thinner out. It's mentioned it was an older year model at the national level in terms of how some of these front clips may look compared to, say, the Braille arts of the TKGs you might see, where you see more of the bubble. It really depends, chassis to chassis, how some of these front aerodynamics work on these carts to find balance in this chassis.
Yeah, you got to figure out the balance you need here in order to get around this circuit because of just all the undulations, all of the different styles that you have to deal and navigate around this circuit. A little bit of improvement right there for Ryan Miller. But this chassis is just, you've got to find that sweet spot for it in order to make it work around this circuit, especially in your KA categories here. As we watch on a couple of karts further back, I believe that is the 938 of Ryan Miller, who is currently sitting in second place. Nope, that's the 990 and the 950. So that's Petticord. And then the 50 is Rush Gary, who sits P5 right at the moment.
Rush Gary not bad so far in the session. James Geist is amongst those down deep in the running order right now. Aaron Geist and the entry list here today, Braden Heber. Also looked pretty solid yesterday. Needs to gain a lot of time. So, speaking of times, coming across the stripe, Petticord over Miller. Petticord goes to the 59.7s. Only two drivers up in the 59-second bracket. Gary jumped up with them. Under a minute to work with. Now on the board. It's going to be close on how many laps they may get here, but right now, Petticord looking comfortable. Petticord, muscles with adrenaline fixed karting. Know several fans are watching along for that team. Spent some time in a couple months testing. Also, Petticord amongst those, if you look up the names, that pop up in the engineering side and the driver coach in terms of the racing skill with Purdue.
20 seconds left to go for most of your front runners here. They will have one additional lap here. Some of their times will be able to take here as they come across the line. Petticord moves and improves to a 59.60 as we wait for the rest of the drivers who are coming around the circuit. Their time in qualifying will end for some as they come across the start-finish line. Checker flag is out for Shane Hambrick, who will be the first one, along with James Geist, who will finish their qualifying session here. But we're watching Petticord, Miller, Gary, Steele, and Thompson. Your top five front runners. Braden Heber crosses the line. He will qualify sixth position for the moment as they work their way up to the top of the hill. Downwards they will go. Tuck of the head right there. You see amongst the drivers in that front group of three as they work their way through the boot and setting up for this final run to the finish in qualifying.
Petticord's been able to drive all the way up to that front group to close out this session. Will they stack up once they come across the stripe? Here they come. It's going to be Petticord who stays on the top of the board. 59.583 over Ryan Miller, Carter Thompson, Rush Gary, and Will Steele. That's the top five, with Heber falling down to sixth, Gardner in seventh. Geist jumps up to eighth, June in ninth. Then Stegenhart, Hambrick, Maker, and Stimmel. Rounding out the entries, that full running order now on your screen. So an impressive drive so far today to set the pole from the 64th run in the Purdue Grand Prix winner, Jacob Petticord, from a few years ago. Now, that brings us into a bit of a break. These drivers will have a few moments before they go racing at about 12 o'clock. We'll be behind the paywall when we come back here on Kart Chaser. Stay tuned. Be sure to become a member so you can watch the action. The Pro-Am Karting Championship continues for MCC Cincinnati after this.
Show.